Hello guys, and welcome to part 3 of E-Man Codes. We're going to get straight into it. The previous part we were literally just getting part. If you haven't seen part 2 yet or part 1, I will link them below in my description box, and of course all the prerequisites that you need to understand and be able to do this project as well. And we will link it. Just for those who just stumbled upon this this particular video, it's a Python project. Essentially, we're building a book/movie app in a Python module known as Flask. It's a web framework, so it's a follow along video. You can code along it, or afterwards you can skip all the way to the last part of this video series, where you'll be able to find the link for the GitHub, and you can it'll be instructions over there on how to run the whole project, and just kind of get it working and see how it looks like. But if you've been following along, then here we are. We're now going to look at connecting the database to the application and then working from there. So we'll carry on from where we left off. We'll just go straight into it. So of course, if you remember, I'll just make my screen slightly bigger. From the last part, we were talking about the SQL Alchemy. SQL Alchemy essentially allows us to be able to connect our application to the database. So it's something that we need to actually have added into the application. And so we need to add that to our requirements.txt. So we type that in. Everything has to be capital letter. If I sniff a little bit, guys, I've got small flu, not the corona, but just flu at the moment. So make sure you're spelling it correct. Alchemy equals 2.4.1. Be careful with the versions as well that you're using, just because of the fact that when it's updated, sometimes they might not support certain things. So often what they can do is when they update something within a software, within a particular module, they may stop supporting certain elements of it. So especially if your application is heavily relying on a lot of different packages that you've installed in your requirement TST, and you're going to be running this for a long term, then you might want to go back and revisit every couple of weeks and just make sure everything is updated. And if that's the case, if they're not updated, go in and make the necessary update. Make sure you're always updated with the packages. So that's something we'll need to use. We might as well just get all the other stuff that we might be using here. So we've got Flask in there. We need Ginger, which is the communication version between the application, the front end of the application, and the back end of the application. And we'll need a 3.11.2 version. And of course, we'll need also WT forms. Forms is quite important. Is what will allow at the customer end, at the application end, it will allow the customer to be able to type in information as how they like. So in our specification, the part where the customer will be able to go in and type in, for example, the movie that they like, or the book that they like, they'll be able to type that in. So this WT forms will take care of that, and we need a version 0.14.3. And if we save that, just a quick apologies though. I've realized that one of my previous videos, the quality wasn't exactly excellent, and so yeah, I'll be trying to invest in my videos and make sure the quality of the videos is as good as possible. Hopefully this video turns out pretty well. I'm using a new software, so we'll see how it turns out. If this doesn't turn out too well, I will take care of it. I'll make sure the next one is of a good standard at least. So yeah, let's have a look at what we did for our app.py. So our app.py, we've got it in there, so it calls from the application version. So let's see what we have in our application. In our roots, return hello. So we're gonna actually we're gonna leave this one here for the time being, and then we're gonna have a look at what how we're gonna connect to our database. And that's quite important that we do that for the time being. If we don't actually have a database, when someone goes in and fills out the form at the application end, it would have nowhere to send that information to. So just to make sure, what do we have in here already? So we've got our models. We might as well just do the models bit as well, so that it knows what kind of tables to create. The model essentially, so once we connect to the database, our models will tell it. Once we run the model, models.py, for example, it will tell it, okay, this is what you've done. These are the tables that we have in place. Could you go ahead and can you create these tables for me, please? So remember, we're going to talk about them. So if the first thing we need to do is do our import from application, import DB, and it will import the database from application, and then also we want from SQL Alchemy, which we've downloaded in our requirements.txt. We're gonna have to rerun again to actually get those updates in there. So alchemy.orm is what we need. Import relationships, and we need a relationship just because of the fact that, like I mentioned in my part 1 of the video, some of the books that we're gonna have, or some of the movies that we're gonna have, there might be a relationship in between them, in the sense that a book might have made a movie out of it. And so if that is the case, then we want our customers to be able to see that is the case, and they can type that in, that information that's all in there, and we can see that on a separate page. So the first thing we need is a class, and we're going to create the books template, the books application. And what we do is, and then you do DB model, and then here we go. And then you type in, the first thing we need is an ID, so like a unique identification. It will be the primary key, and the primary key in SQL is essentially for every table, if you like, there'll be something that will identify each row and make, so for example, if I just explain that clearly here, we'll have our ID page, and then in the columns we'll have a book name, we'll have an author name, we'll have the genre, we'll have the short content about it, the short content or description about the book, and then we'll have another row which will talk about the relationship with the movie side. And so if someone wanted to access just for a specific book, they wanted to access details about the genre of that book, or maybe the author name of that specific book, having a primary key would allow them to be able to access that specific information instead of showing that person everything in our table. It's good from a security point of view, and it's good from an organizational point of view. So we're just going to create these models. DB dot integer. So we tell it that the value that will be entering there, it's an integer, and then primary key equals true, so that Python knows this when it creates the tables to be a primary key. And like I mentioned, we'll have another column in there that will be the book name. Make sure we spell that correctly. And then DB dot column. And then, like I said, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm not going to type it all of it here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and just have it all in there. Fantastic. So this is what it looks like, first of all. So like I mentioned, we've got a column for ID, we've got a column for book name, we've got a column for author name, genre, short content, and then the last bit, which is quite important, it will talk about the description, so the relationship between our books table, and then we're going to have also a movie table also here. Another thing that's really important for debugging is you want to have a function in here which will essentially, if there was a problem, it will be able to diagnose exactly where the issue is arising from. And so you have a function here which will essentially return all the different columns in your table, but create a self out of it, so that it's self-aware of, it's aware of itself. So if we type it in here, brilliant. And as you can see, So we've made itself aware of itself. It includes a book name, the book author name, and then this bit just tells you we've got a new line. So it just repeats, it carries on that it's a new line, breaks line, and then title, self-genre, and then short content. Brilliant. And then now we're going to create the template or the page for the movie. So we do class, movies, and once again we follow the same pattern of DB model. And then we add in the specific details about it. Also, we need a primary key for these movies also, so we'll do DB column DB dot integer primary key. So we've got a primary key in there. Just a quick side note, guys, by the way. So in some actual companies or in some actual big industrial applications, the primary key, you want it to be more complicated than just a couple of numbers. In our situation, it might be auto-generated, whereby it will count from 1, 2, 3 all the way to infinity, depending on how many different types of rows that you insert into your table. But for more kind of complicated applications or business users, you want to have a much more complicated primary key. That way, it will prevent duplications. The way we have it right now, it will prevent duplications for the use case that we have. We're not going to be using an extensive amount of databases. We won't have an extraordinary amount of books or an extraordinary amount of movies. Maybe at most, just for the example that for this project, we're probably going to have maybe 10 or 15 in there, just so we can display them one by one. But if we were to do as a large scale application, we may have at least 10,000 or something like that. And in that case, it becomes quite important to have a more complicated ID name for it. So we go back to it. And then we're going to add in the next couple of columns. And we're going to do book movie app as another column. The director's name, the genre, the short content again, and then the relationship for the book, and then the relationship and tell that it's a parent relationship. And then we're going to do the same with the same function that we wrote here for it. So here we are. I'll just go through them a little bit more detail for you. So when the tables are created, you pay attention to db.string. It will tell you that the book that they're adding, they can't add it as a number. String, if a string represents a text, so it has to be a word, and it can only be 30 characters long. Nullable equals false, which we have in some of our tables up here also, in some of our columns up here also. Nullable equals false. It's actually telling that for this particular column, for this particular row in this column, they can leave the null as false, so they don't have to fill out this information. Actually, no, the nullable means equal and false means they do have to fill out this information. If they try to insert into the form, into our table, every information apart from this one, it won't allow them just because they have to fill out information. It goes for every part where it's also nullable false. And of course here, we create the relationship here. We created the relationship, the child relationship here for the book, and so we also created here for the movie application also. So if there is a book and there's a movie made out of it, it can also be represented here, and vice versa. And then you cement all of that information in by doing a parent application as well, and doing that relationship there for the books, and then back populates the child. So if you were to add a book in a movie in here, and there was a book after that movie, it will go ahead and add those information in here also for the specific ID that you specified for. Brilliant. And of course, we've got a function that we've also created here. So we've sorted out our templates, our models table. Once we've connected our databases all together, and we run and give instruction to create.py, which we might as well just take care of now. We haven't actually got anything in there. This is where this is the module that we'll call for it to actually create the application, to create the database for us. And so what we want to do first is let me just make sure I've saved it. Make sure you save everything that you're doing here, or else nothing will be smashing. If you lose your work, and you've wasted a bit of time. So from application, import DB again with DB for database, and then from application model, so that it knows where it's going to create these applications, where it's going to create these tables. And so then we can import books. As you can see, it already has it there. One great thing about Python is that once you specify the class, because we've got two classes in here, the book class and the movies class, and because of that, there's a concept known as kind of like inheritance within Python. We'll cover that in some other videos when we're looking at more advanced concepts of Python. It's really intelligent stuff. It allows you to access elements of different classes, and also I guess elements of functions within different classes. So just for this basic, we know we've got a books class here, and we've also got a movies class here, so we want to access both of them. And then we'll do db, which is a module we're calling, drop underscore or. So it just tells it if there are any tables created at the moment, you want to drop all of them, remove all of them, and then db dot create or, which tells it to create everything in these applications. So in these, create every table that we have in books and in the movies. It will go ahead and it will create all of it. Yeah, so I'm gonna end this video here. I want to keep these videos nice and short, just because of the fact that when it's longer than a couple of minutes, attention span has go down a little bit. It also gives you time to refresh, go over a few things that you haven't, it's new concepts to you. So in the next video, we're going to connect the database and then we're going to create it. We're going to use Docker, of course. So yeah, if you're enjoying it so far, stick with it. We'll soon be done with this video. I want to release a few videos in concession, just because I have to make it and then deploy as usual. But yeah, thank you, and then click on the link below for the next or it should be on the left hand side. If not, go on my channel and click for part 4. But this is part